Hello, Town of Kingsville. Dennis Rogers from the desk of the mayor. Just kind of want to update you on some items here over the last month or so. I hope everybody had a good March break if you had one. I'm sure the kids enjoyed being off. I know mine did. So welcome back. So our first meeting of the month of March, we had our community grants, and what this is a program every year where we allocate a dollar amount in budget, $60,000, and we have our community groups, service clubs, organizations, Kingsville based that apply towards a grant. They put an application process. It goes through administration. There's a cap on the amount that they can ask for. And then administration makes a recommendation, comes to the committee of the whole, where council has a conversation about it. Then they make a recommendation to the council meeting, and then at the council meeting, they're formally approved. So that happened the beginning of March. So again, congratulations to all our, to our nonprofits and service clubs within Kingsville that received, their dollars. We also approved our Southwest water main. So we received one of our largest infrastructure grant in our town's history, $9 million, for a water line to go on the west side. And, we put it in within the second concession. Now we just approved the tender to be able to bring it down into County Road 20. So again, that opens up capacity, for some new homes on the west side, some new commercial on the west side, but as well as redundancy, for that whole west side. So, exciting project. Glad to see, this last leg's kind of getting put in there. Last night, council approved a false alarm bylaw. So this was brought forward to us by our OPP. They're finding a lot of false alarm calls that they're going to. And, 34, I think it was 34 at one spot. So a significant amount of time being wasted. And, I know we received a lot of bullets, for our tax increase this past year. Over 2% of that was our OPP contract. A 17% increase over last year, for this contract. It was mandated by the province. We didn't have any say in it. Obviously impacted our budget. But, 40% of that contract is attributed to calls for service. So if you do the math on the amount of false alarm calls that we did, we spent $52,000 on false alarms. So obviously a significant amount of dollars. That's big money for us. We only have so much money to go around. You hear me talking about infrastructure and our infrastructure deficits and the amount that we have to pay. We can't afford to lose that money or leave that money on the table. So a bylaw, to be able to find those that have for the repeat offenders. So again, I think it's a good thing moving forward. We got to find our efficiencies. We got to find dollars that were there, because again, only so much to go around. So Ruthven sanitary and litigation update. So this was a pretty big presentation, big report. Great presentation by administration. I encourage you to go online, kingsville.ca, click on, I think it's agendas and minutes. You click on the council meeting, March 23rd. The video is up there now. It was a great conversation. It was a great presentation by administration to really give you a full update of where we're at. So I won't go too in depth with it, just some high level stuff. We approved a countywide water and wastewater servicing plan. So what this means is we're going to look at all of Kingsville, Cottam, Ruthven, as a whole in terms of our water and our wastewater, just to see what we need for capacity, the shape that's everything in, what do we got to invest in, what do we need for the future for growth, you name it. Just a holistic view, of all of our water and wastewater, pipes, and plan into the future and what we got to invest in it. So very important piece, going out to tender, and, see within our strategic plan, resilient infrastructure is one of our pillars. You've heard me talk about infrastructure from day one. All those tax increases that you've seen, a majority of it is going towards our infrastructure. $18 million is what we should be spending every year on current infrastructure. That's not future, that's our current. Right now, we're only spending 11. So you can imagine there's $7 million, that's a gap that we got to fill, and we put together a long-term plan to be able to do it. But, I can assure you that gap has been shortened here in the last 3 years, but, that's not something we can kick down the road anymore. Like infrastructure, it'll fail. And then when infrastructure fails in communities die. That's a sad reality of where it is. So we kind of put our foot in the sand and say, hey, we know we're going to take bullets for it, but this is something we have to invest in, and this is going to be a major piece to that. We also approved a comprehensive sewer bylaw. So again, this is going to look at, sewer use. Ag one we approved already, the greenhouse one we approved already. So look at residential, look at commercial, look at our industrial, you name it. And then of course, continued compliance within our greenhouse with our new greenhouse bylaw. So there's 25 25 greenhouses that are connected to our Ruthven system. 7 are compliant and almost pretty much finished. Then we have 8 that are almost there. Just waiting on some more engineering and infrastructure for them to put in. But we still have 10 that have made little or no progress. And I think within the conversation that you saw, and then a motion that came forward is we need these 10 to come to the table and be good community partners and be part of the solution. So you saw a motion come forward where a letter is going to go out to them, to those 10, just to let them know that you have 90 days to be able to come to the table, or we're going to start issuing some disconnection notices. So obviously nobody wants to cut anyone off. This is an industry that creates a lot of jobs. They spend a lot of money in the community. The spin-off businesses, the trades that benefit from it, a great economic driver. But at the end of the day is, we need them to be good community partners for us to be able to fix this issue, because we have an issue. And we have well over half that are on their way. And thank you so much for the help and you working with us towards a solution. So again, we need more to step up to the table, please. So the last piece I want to talk about, is our business community. So, we've had some shock waves here, with Cindy's closing, with Vern's closing. These are 2 long-term, multi-generational businesses that have been around for a long time. And, with them closing, part of you dies. We all have memories at those places. And, that lets us know that, we, small business, we have an issue, and it's happening everywhere. So we're having conversations with our small and medium-sized businesses, the BIA, or larger businesses. We have a business relations officer, which we brought in last year. Brandon Stanley is his name. He's really a layer of support for our business community. If you have questions, you need to reach out. You're going through a building process or you're looking for grants. He's really a layer of support for our business community. Obviously on the customer service side as well, to be able to help. So I'm going to put his contact information, within the post. Please reach out to him. We're here to help. We're here to support. We got another kind of business support thing coming up here. I don't have too many details yet, but please stay tuned. It's going to be happening here, pretty soon. So stay tuned. Again, just got to be there for our businesses, and we got to find out what's going on. We got to find out what they need. So that's what I'm working on. So please stay tuned. So other than that, Kingsville, hope have a great day. We got sunshine today. Hopefully it lasts, and then we'll talk to you soon. Bye.